Join us as we jump into the deep end of the pool. The Deadpool, that is. Welcome to Dear Watchers, an omniversal comic book podcast where we do a deep dive into the multiverse.
Our line was written for this. We are traveling with you through the stories and the worlds that make up the omniverse of fictional realities we all love. And your watchers on this journey are me, the Merc with the mouth, Guido.
Oh, I was going to say something like that because I usually have the one-liners on this show.
But you just don't know Deadpool well enough, so...
No. I'm just plain Rob, I guess.
You could be Rob Liefeld.
Oh, no thank you. So, what's new in our little section of the multiverse?
There is not much new. X-Men 97 continues and reaches its final arc, and we've reported on it regularly. I'm sure we will cover it formally at some point as an alternate universe, but it continues to be amazing. And there's not much new. We want to hear from you, so please reach out. Tell us what alternate universes or alternate characters or multiversal stories you want to learn about and have us cover. We have a pretty awesome nostalgia-filled one, but also with a current link coming up in our next episode, but it's a surprise. So let us know what we should continue to do after that.
And if you're joining us for the first time, we have 3 parts of our journey through the multiverse today. Origins of the story, exploring multiversity, and pondering possibilities. So thanks for coming along.
And remember, leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening and follow us on social media at Dear Watchers.
And with that, Dear Watchers, welcome to episode 133, and let's check out what's happening in the Omniverse with our travels to today's alternate universe. And today we are discussing the final Dirty Harry film, The Deadpool, starring Clint Eastwood, Liam Neeson with a ponytail.
Could you imagine
and James...
that was our alternate universe?
I don't know why. Whenever I hear Deadpool, for some reason, I think of that movie. It also has Jim Carrey, but billed as James Carrey, playing an Axl Rose type character.
I would never have thought of that movie. So
I guess the Deadpools are things out there, but no. We are actually battling our inner monologue and pop culture references to answer the question, what if Deadpool was Frank-N-Furter in the Rocky Horror Picture Show and was also in The Breakfast Club with Peter Parker?
Wow, what if? That's a mashup I bet most of our listeners did not know existed, because this is the Viewed Once Earth 13043. And while it's a little bit of an illusion reality, not totally an alternate Earth, it's like the imaginary stories of DC long ago. So we're going to treat it like an alternate Earth. It's even been cataloged, so we are running with it. And of course, if our hints so far, well, our question gives away, it's Deadpool. So we've previously talked about Deadpool back in episode 13 from October 2021 when Venom possessed him. And we looked at the Deadpool #1 issue and the origin of his character. So we covered it way back then. Go back and listen. Who knows what that even sounds like? It was almost 3 years ago. It was 120 episodes ago. But here we are revisiting this mega famous character, because there is something mega famous happening for him on the horizon real soon. And we'll get to that.
But what, Guido, is your background with Deadpool? I'm sure we discussed that way back in episode 13, but let's recap, since, as you said, it was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. And I don't know what I said back then, and we didn't go back and listen. So This might be a repeat, or it's going to sound like I make things up because it's different. I have no idea. But truthfully, what's really weird for me, I don't think it matches with who I am and the kinds of characters I like. And yet I love Deadpool. I loved Deadpool when I was a teenager reading comics in the 90s. I don't know why. I really can't explain it. I'm assuming it's the fourth wall breaking meta nature that Joe Kelly really brings in. Fabian Nicieza plays a little bit with that prior to Joe Kelly, but I think there must just have been something with that I really latched onto. And so I loved reading Deadpool's the miniseries are funny, but they're more serious. It's really his ongoing series. I bought every single issue. I remember it being one of the titles I most looked forward to going to get at the comic store, because I also think I didn't realize my superhero comics could be funny until I was reading Deadpool. So I was a huge fan, and then it faded. I didn't follow Deadpool into the 2000s very much. I was never obsessed. I just really loved him then. And I've certainly gotten back into him over the last 5 or 10 years, in part from his movies that we'll talk about, but also having great creators like the recent series. The most recent now is Cody Ziegler, who we love because he did Spider-Punk. So he's currently writing the Deadpool. And so I've just really appreciated the teams they've put on the book, and it's been fun, and I continue to enjoy Deadpool. Well, so I'm a bigger fan than I thought I was. It
feels like it's a good bridge between Spider-Man kind of comics, we'll also talk about today. Maybe that's something for a younger audience, not, of course, all of them. And then, like, getting into a bit more adult comics. Like, you mentioned you got into him as a teenager, and he feels like he's the perfect, like, bridge from more
he's edgy, but not
older
he's
comics.
Edgy, but not, like, in your face, which I don't like that kind of in your face thing. So, yeah. So I'm a big fan. I think I know more than most people, but I'm not the number one Deadpool fan. How about you?
Yeah, for me, it was definitely that Joe Kelly miniseries. I think it was like the 2 miniseries together.
Well, that's
right.
No, he didn't write those miniseries. Fabian.
Oh, he didn't write those miniseries.
No,
okay, so those were the big ones for me. Were those miniseries with Juggernaut and Black Tom? And
that's the second one, especially
that other villain who people will probably scream at their podcast now. I can't remember his name. Like the zombie guy, and his arms extend.
Well, he's all yellow with the fingernails.
Yeah,
I literally just reread this 2 weeks ago, and I couldn't tell you what his name was.
I had his action figure, and his arms would just go a little bit longer. That was like the extent of his, and I don't think he's ever really come back too much. But
no, he actually gets killed. I just read it, but I can't tell you his name.
But I love those. I love those comics. I read those all. Those were some of the comics I reread over and over. And then I think I read a
your very beat up copies are upstairs next to my more pristine copies. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I read my comics. They felt used. They lived.
I did too. I was just very careful. I knew the future.
I was not carrying them all around. And then a few other comics, but mostly that miniseries. And then I had the toys and things like that. But I guess also growing up, and I know we'll get into it a little bit, he didn't seem to exist in the cartoons and other things the same way that a character like Spider-Man or the X-Men, of course, did. So my involvement with him kind of stopped there.
Yeah, there was only so much exposure. A few toys and then comics up until an explosion, which we'll get into, that explosion of when he pervades popular culture. But
well, we talked about our origins with Deadpool, so now let's jump into origins of the story.
Right now on this very show, you're going to get the answer to all your questions. Our amazing story begins a few years ago.
So for this segment, let's talk Deadpool as a character, his origin, his history in comics, and most importantly, his history with alternate universes.
So Deadpool, aka Wade Wilson,
or in your notes you just wrote, I'm going to point out, you wrote Deadpoo. So, which is a very Deadpool-like joke, I have to say.
It's surely been made dozens of times in the books. I have no doubt. So, yes. Well, all right. Deadpool, the character, not Deadpool, aka Wade Wilson, is created as a clear pastiche. I think that's the right word, though. Let's just go with carbon copy of Deathstroke. Because remember, Deathstroke's name is Slade Wilson. Yes, so you've got Death, Dead, Pool, Stroke, as in backstroke, and then you've got Wade Wilson, Slade Wilson. So quite literally created by Rob Liefeld and Fabian Nicieza in February 1991's New Mutants number 98. And so Deadpool's powers are that he is, of course, kind of agile, ninja-like, good with weapons, mercenary, but he has superhuman regenerative healing abilities, and he is also a character now known for breaking the fourth wall. He becomes increasingly funny as time goes on. And of course, for those who don't know, under his mask, he's scarred all over his body. He had cancer, and his superhuman ability to regenerate has cured his cancer. So it's a mutant ability, essentially. It's later retconned not to be a mutant. I think for a long time he is mutant, even if it's not explicitly named. And there he gets his powers from Weapon X of Wolverine fame, so that's why he's bound up in the Wolverine franchise from the very beginning. There's also the age-old debate if he's an X-Men character or not, and so let me just settle now where I stand. Yes, he is absolutely an X-Men character, and if that needed to be confirmed again, let's just go with the fact that when his comics come out nowadays, they are branded as part of the X books. He is part of the reign of X, the fall of X, all these things. His books are in there. So even though he's not a mutant, definitely an X-Men related character. So
well, that miniseries I mentioned, he faces Juggernaut and Black Tom, who are characters literally related to two of the X-Men. So
he dates out of that. He meets Siren, Teresa Cassidy, and starts like kind of dating, flirting, being friends with her. He shows up in X-Force with her. She's in his book for a while. So yeah, he's totally bound up in X-Men. Not going to debate it. Let's move on.
Well, in terms of comic publishing, Deadpool has a pretty extensive back catalog. His first solo title is a miniseries in 1994, followed by another, and we just talked about those, and then his first ongoing in 1997, lasting 70 issues. He's then in some other spin-off titles, such as Cable and Deadpool, that's a major one, and classic ongoing, and 7 more ongoing volumes after that, through to now, when it was just relaunched with a number 1. So he has hundreds of solo comics, over 300 issues, plus dozens and dozens of spin-offs, one-shots, and miniseries. So
and probably hundreds of cameo appearances in other people's books, too. So especially once his popularity ascended, he was kind of the Wolverine of the Marvel Universe, where you put him on the cover of a book to sell it. You put him in the book to sell it. And so...
Well, for a long time, maybe this has waned a bit now, but for a long time at New York Comic Con, I think he was the number one cosplay person. You would see him, and you would see alternate versions of him too. So we're going to talk in other media about other media in our final segment. But let's talk about the alternate Wades.
Yeah, well, so the Marvel Wiki has the 616 Prime Deadpool, of course, plus 185 other versions cataloged. Wow. That is like insane. That's wild. Now note that some of these, of course, appear in the background of one single panel. Even today's alternate universe is a little bit of that. These are not all like fleshed out worlds, speaking characters, etc. But the alternates include just everything from a Deadpool that founded the X-Men to Kid Deadpool, Kidpool, an amalgam with Wolverine, a zombie, a werewolf, Dracula, Venomized Deadpool, Deadpool Horseman of the Apocalypse, Iron Man Deadpool, Nazi Deadpool. I mean, there are just so many Deadpools. And there's really... They pop up in lots of different ways in some of those one-shots in all sorts of places. But there was the Deadpool Core, a 12-issue limited series in 2010 that also had a prequel series where he's trying to create a team of multiversal Deadpools. Then a few years later in 2013, part of the Deadpool Kills series where they have Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe and Deadpool Kills Deadpool comes out. So this is really popular series, and in this one, he has a bad double named Dreadpool, who universe hops to kill versions of Deadpool. So he starts killing like the Deadpool core and stuff. So lots of multiversal stuff, though much later in his run, for sure. But little bits and bobs of alternate versions have popped up over many, many years.
You know, it's making me think, too, the other person I see, the other character that's cosplayed all the time in New York Comic-Con is Harley Quinn, and they really do have so many similarities in terms of
I think we talked about
even their
this when we
fighting
talked
style
about
and
her
their
episode.
personalities, and we
The
did
color,
the one where
the colors flat out.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
color.
totally.
I mean, there's so much.
That's true. That's true.
In these two characters. It's fascinating. I would imagine it's almost like the X-Men and the Teen Titans in a lot of ways, especially in the inception of the Teen Titans, where you're like, okay, sure, someone might have been copying someone, but like they're probably actually copying each other constantly. And the two characters are almost like pushing each other along because they're both fourth wall breaking.
And he became probably fourth wall breaking first, right? And
yes,
then like
correct.
that influenced her
because she's
like,
barely
sure
in comics at that point of his
Mm-hmm.
inception. She's debuted in the TV show. She's possibly debuted in the Batman Adventures comics, but she certainly hasn't made her way to the DC universe by the time he has an ongoing.
Bisexual, pansexual characters as well, and that's something that comes up in the issue we're going to talk about today too.
Totally, and they've been written by a really diverse range of creators. The one is created by someone who is not interested in that and not worth even talking about.
Well,
and of course,
created
that's Deadpool's
by. I think
co-creator.
this is where I think we mentioned this on a recent episode. It's come up with Wolverine, like who is the creator. But I think this is
and
a perfect
Deadpool's a good example, especially
Yeah.
because Liefeld he's an artist. Now, he does have co-plotting and story credits on a lot of the books, including the creation of Deadpool. But for sure, Deadpool's voice is Fabian Nicieza from the very beginning.
Well, Guido, you're feeling very sleepy, and I'm hypnotizing you into exploring multiversity.
I am your guide through these vast new realities. Follow me and ponder the question, what if?
And today we are discussing Avenging Spider-Man, issues number 12 and 13 from Marvel Comics. Those are from November and December 2012. There's no titles to the issues. And we're asking the question, what if Deadpool was Frank-N-Furter in the Rocky Horror Picture Show and also in The Breakfast Club with Peter Parker?
So both of these issues are written by Kevin Shinick, who's a guest writer, and the guest penciler on this is Aaron Kuder, who does the inks. Colors by Matt Hollingsworth, letters by Joe Caramagna, and edited by Stephen Wacker. Quick background on these folks. I don't know if you saw this, but you'll be really interested in this guy, Rob. Kevin Shinick, he's had quite a career. He actually started acting on Broadway, and in fact is still acting. He's going to be Dick Clark in the Michael Jackson biopic coming out next year. But for our concerns, he's a writer. Sometimes of comics, though really not at all. He's had less than a handful at each company. But he created the Mad animated TV show, which then is acquired by Robot Chicken. I
remember that. Yeah.
Which ironically, he wrote for Robot Chicken before creating the Mad animated show. Or maybe it's not a coincidence. Maybe that is why Robot Chicken acquired the Mad animated show. He then created and wrote the Spider-Man TV series on Disney XD in 2017 and has his own movie that he wrote and directed too. So really interesting career and not a lot with comics, but a bit with Spider-Man. Aaron Kuder, on the other hand, is a pretty well-known comics artist with a lot of Marvel and DC, especially around the New 52 era. For Marvel, some good runs on Ghost Rider, Fantastic Four, and Daredevil most recently, and a bunch of other covers that he does for both companies. So why don't we start with a quick summary of our imaginary/alternate universe?
Spider-Man is having dreams a la Inception, and Deadpool is helping him get through them layer by layer, including a layer where Peter is Anthony Michael Hall and Wade is Judd Nelson in The Breakfast Club, with Flash Thompson as Emilio and, of course, MJ as Molly Ringwald.
But Ali Sheedy probably as herself, which is a funny moment.
AKA a villain in there. But when Spidey awakes, it turns out that Deadpool is actually trying to hypnotize him to break his employer out of prison. That is Hyno Hustler, a terrible blaxploitation stereotype villain that should have stayed forgotten to the Bronze Age. Hypno hypnotizes Deadpool, but it fails. Spidey throws in a Ryan Reynolds joke, of course. And the two hatch a plan to beat the Hustler. Deadpool shows up with Spider-Man dead on his sword, but it turns out it's a fake out, and they switch costumes. Peter would not let Wade watch him undress, and Deadpool's healing powers help him recover from the swordplay.
And while this distraction happens, Hyno Hustler is defeated, and Spidey forces the hypnotic goggles onto Deadpool, giving us a glimpse of today's alternate universe, in which Deadpork, which is basically Spider-Ham, but Deadpool, swings through. But most importantly, we get Wade playing Frank-N-Furter in a full production of the Time Warp from Rocky Horror Picture Show, including the Transylvanians behind him, including Columbia next to him, and including the iconic science fiction double feature lips that open the movie. And that is the literal last page of this comic, the end. So I intentionally didn't tell you a thing about this. So
No.
How did you enjoy the 2 issues, and especially once we hit our alternate universe?
Issues overall, I really enjoyed this a lot. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's good. They're a good pair together because, of course, we always think of Spider-Man as having the quips, but also being kind of this nerdy character as well. So it plays off of and like this goody two shoes kind of character. So it plays off of Wade really well. Like they're a great duo. There's even a lot of comments on the fact that you were saying before that Deadpool's a pastiche of Deathstroke, but there's jokes about him even stealing Spider-Man's costume too, because they're so similar.
And apparently Rob Liefeld has said that he was really inspired by the simplicity of Spider-Man's costume and in creating the look that he created. So yeah, there are definitely reasons for Spider-Man to say that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think the Dreamverse is such a great, fun place to set this in, especially for a character like Deadpool, who is breaking the fourth wall, and you're going to put in pop culture references like the ones that are part of our alternate universe. And the last thing, and we can talk about it more later maybe, but the art I just loved. It reminded me so much.
I knew this would be your style of
Yes.
art. Aaron Kuder is very much like, I don't know who did those auteur comics.
It reminded me
like.
just of that auteur series, also a bit of the Martin Matarazzo, the
Ice Cream Man.
the Ice Cream Man. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very similar sort of exaggerated style, but I like it a lot too. I think it actually works really well here because it's not too grotesque, but it adds a little bit of a creepiness to everything that's happening. And yeah, I enjoyed the art also. So yeah, it is really fun. And then did you enjoy the surprise of Wade as Frank-N-Furter?
I had no idea. So I thought the surprise was going to be the Breakfast Club reference, which it was like, oh, this is so smart because Flash Thompson is the jock, and then you've got the redhead as the famous redhead. Okay, like I thought that was what it was going to be. So once we get to the Frank-N-Furter at the very end, which is so random because, of course, again, the Breakfast Club
totally
makes
random.
sense. He's trapped in a high school. There's these great amalgamations or great analogs, but then the Frank-N-Furter thing is just like completely out of left field. So I had no idea. What did you think when you first encountered that?
Well, I hadn't read these issues until I was trying to decide if we were going to read them for this. When I was scrolling through all of the different Wades, as soon as I saw one dressed as Frank-N-Furter, I was like, "Oh, we have to cover that one." And so then I read these issues, and so I knew the twist, if you will, was coming. I knew the alternate universe was going to be Wade, and I figured there was not going to be much to it. I think what it does, to stay on that, and then we can zoom back out to the rest of it, it just keeps, I think, what everyone gets about his character is he's quirky, he's dark, and so Rocky Horror is technically horror. Horror's in the name. It's not your traditional horror. It's not gory, but it is a horror movie about aliens. He's queer. I mean, Deadpool is, and in the issue before this, like he is, it's occasionally been controversial. I think it's sort of settled now, but for sure, Kevin Shinick is making him canonically queer. He actually, in the first issue, is telling that one female guard she's saying something about, oh, you don't even know who was kissing or the female in the dream was saying, oh, who has an index finger and was kissing your boyfriend last night? And like Deadpool's talking about himself.
Yeah. And he's wearing a skirt at one point. And
yeah, he's the cheerleader version.
Cheerleader.
So he is canonically queer. So to have him show up as Frank-N-Furter makes total sense. It seems like a movie he would love. He's often singing things in his panels too. In this one, they don't have that as much, I guess, because Hypno Hustler is for whatever reason singing all the time. No idea why. So yeah, it's just a fun final moment for sure in a fun 2 issues with a lot of references. I think what I like about the 2 issues though, as a pair, is it's not like too jokey. There's so many jokes, but like there's a plot and there's action, there's a plan. So I appreciate, and it's not a serious issue for sure. It's not meant to be a story with stakes, but I just appreciate that it's also not Kevin Shinick trying to just use a joke machine, like turn Deadpool into a joke machine. So I think that helps it feel like a really good couple of issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the basic concept of Peter confronting high school bullies and being kind of trapped in this nightmarish high school is perfect for that character, of the character that is beat up but is actually the superhero. And so I think that works so well for
and the Inception
him.
levels, like that he'll defeat one and then advance the level, and that keeps getting him closer to waking up. Like, it's a fun way to just tell a silly story but not have it be totally absurd or ridiculous. And then in the second one, I think their plan, there's a great full page where Spider-Man is just literally on the end of his katana, Deadpool's katana. Though they've switched costumes and we don't know that at that point. And it's just black censored out because it would be really gory. And I think that's fun. It's a fun plan. It's of course unnecessary. They probably could have defeated Hypno Hustler without this plan, but it still just adds a lot of fun and adds this good moment where you're like, wait, he hasn't killed Spider-Man, but you're sort of like, what's going on? And then you figure out what the plan was.
I was wise, or to use Hypno Hustler's language, I was hip to what was going on.
And then as Deadpool says, no one says hip anymore.
So what's the deal with that character, Hypno Hustler? Like, so he's an
he is a Bronze Age
character?
creation. He is an actual old character who had like one minor appearance. I looked up to see if this was his return. It wasn't. He had been in a few issues in the 2000s leading into this, so I guess there was an attempt to sort of have him be a character again. He has a total of like half a dozen appearances, not a lot at all. But I think what's hard is again, he's a blaxploitation character, and Kevin Shinick might have been leaning into that, but it's hard not to experience it as a racist depiction when a white writer is putting all of this way of speaking into a black character's speech bubbles. So I wish that weren't the case.
Yeah, well, because there's also a lot of references to many other forgotten Spider-Man villains, because at one point, so they're actually in this jail, not in a high school. They've released all the prisoners, but the prisoners have been disguised as, in Spider-Man's head, through hypnosis, as his greatest villain. So there's the Green Goblin and Doc Ock and all these characters, but in fact they're like the Painter. These other villains that we like not really don't remember anymore. So there's a lot of commentary through not only Hypno Hustler, but these other characters who we don't really see. We only see them as like the Green Goblin, but these forgotten supervillains, the C Squad, really.
Oh yeah, I don't even know if they're C-list.
The D Squad.
Yeah, D-list for sure. Yeah, so I think that's also fun. So I think it's a really good pair of issues that I would recommend to Deadpool fans, Spider-Man fans, Rocky Horror fans, humor fans. I mean, I just think it works.
And we don't know, has Dead Pork ever come back? Because that also seems like something that
He's
100.
not.
No, that's
Totally.
strange.
There are, and I mean, there are so many like of those kind of little miniature, it's like the X babies. Like there are so many of these iterations. So Spider-Ham and all those farm animal characters that came out of there are so many different versions of those, but Spider Pork does not show up again. What I found fun too is in the earlier issue, when they're in one of the dream layers, did you notice, you probably weren't primed to look for it. Spider-Ham is in one of the dream layers, and there's like a Spider-Ham and a Spider-Ham clone and a Spider-Ham Venom. So there's all like the Spider-Hams are swinging through the high school hallway in one scene. So, and they also have like Four Bushman in the background of one of the panels. So they have all these like really weird characters showing up in Spider-Man's dream, just sort of hitting on that same D-list kind of obscure characters thing. And then I guess they're putting Deadpool Pork into the canon of that.
Yeah, no, I could totally see that as a animated spin-off with John Mulaney's Spider-Ham, but with also Dead Pork as well. Like I could definitely see that, and maybe utilizing something similar to the art style here, because it just really goes with this kind of almost a Ren and Stimpy kind of cartoon look.
That's true. That would be a good style. So do you want to go back to Earth 13043, which in this case, let's take that question to mean, do you want the Rocky Horror Picture Show starring Wade Wilson?
I don't know if I want the Rocky Horror Picture Show with that, but I would love to see maybe Wade in all different movies. I don't know if that
movie
has
parodies.
Been done.
I
movie
bet
parodies.
It feels like it exists. It feels like I've read that. Maybe it just is such a natural fit, but it does feel like there has been or should be or will be some movie parody anthology with Wade moving through
something
movies.
with him is like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. I'm thinking like there's lots of classic things that you could then take and put him into. So something like that I would love to see. That way maybe you could expand on the Rocky Horror thing a little bit more than just one page. It could just be a couple pages, and then you could also get into these other parodies a little bit, like a classic 50s, 60s Godzilla kind of thing. Or
here's what I think you're pulling from, and it's the same thing I was thinking I would like to see. Is David Avallone's Elvira miniseries.
Yes.
So basically, Deadpool could serve that purpose for people who haven't listened to our Elvira episode or our David Avallone interview episode or read these great miniseries that he's doing. She'll go into a different world. She's meta fourth wall breaking joke machine kind of character. And so she'll end up either in like the Creature from the Black Lagoon world via the movie set, or she'll end up in there's the one where she's just going from horror movie to horror movie, Horrorland, and she'll go into the TV and end up in Alien. Or right now she's with Lovecraft, and so she's going in and out of all these Lovecraft stories. So Deadpool could easily do that and like go in and out of the Rocky Horror Picture Show one issue. Then the next issue he goes in and out of, I don't know, some other movie musical, Cabaret, good fit. Then you get Nazi Deadpool in there.
Well, it's making me think too. We just recently covered Pinky and the Brain and Animaniacs, and it's also a similar kind of thing there, where you can take those characters and suddenly put like Yakko in whatever, a 1930s movie, and he still behaves exactly the same, but everyone else is stuck in that world. And that's exactly, I think, how you would have to do it. Wade is always the same, and everything around him is changing. Well, until we see that, we do have another Deadpool thing coming up really soon, so let us head into our Pondering Possibilities.
Will the future you describe be averted, averted?
So, Guido, what is this segment going to be?
All right, well, let's talk about those other media depictions of Deadpool, and then we can imagine what we could end up seeing in this character's future, both in terms of Ryan Reynolds in the MCU, but also beyond that. So some background, because there's been a lot of other media, so we're just going to gloss over it. Before we get to the silver screen, on the small screen, what is TV? The bronze screen?
No, I think it's just the small screen.
It should be the bronze screen. He's been on X-Men the animated series, but of course that was a non-speaking momentary cameo. He's been in the X-Men anime series, the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, Marvel Disc Wars Avengers, Marvel Future Avengers.
Marvel Disc Wars?
So
what the heck is that?
It's a Japanese show, import show. So there's a whole bunch of
sounds
these
like
weird
Pogs
little
or something like that.
web series. It's tie-in with a game. It is a tie-in with a game.
Okay.
And it might have even been a web series. I don't even know. There was a 2017 greenlit animated series that has been scrapped. It was FXX, so we can talk about that possibility. I bet it was going to be like Harley. Mm-hmm. And he's also been in so many video games. Go listen to our episode 129 on X-Men video games, because he debuts in 2005's Legends 2 Rise of Apocalypse. So pretty late in his run, he debuts in video games, and John Kassir voices him in that video game, which is so cool.
Who is the Crypt Keeper? So for folks who don't know.
And he's now been in at least 24 video games. He's been in like Fortnite and non-Marvel video games, but he's probably at least had a skin or a costume in every single Marvel video game since 2005.
And then on the big screen, we get the X-Men's Origins Wolverine debut in 2009, played by Ryan Reynolds. Now, I've actually never seen this film.
You haven't? We should put it on in the background one day. It's a very odd movie. It is as bad as people say it, but it's like odd bad. It's like you don't fully understand what went wrong or why.
And he's not really dead. I mean, he's Deadpool, but not really Deadpool, right? Like
he's Deadpool, but like he can't talk. He's an absurd character.
Which is, of course, the main thing about Deadpool is that he can talk. It's even his nickname. And doesn't he not have a mouth?
Yeah.
Yet his character is called the Merc with a mouth. Very bizarre. Well, though we know that Ryan really loved this character, because he also reprised his role in a 2016 solo title in a potentially adjusted X-Men Fox franchise timeline that's pretty darn confusing.
Yeah.
And then 2018 gets a sequel to that blockbuster hit, Deadpool 2, and then Disney owns Fox, and we have Deadpool and Wolverine, not Deadpool 3, coming out this July 2024.
Yeah. And it is not Deadpool 3. It was long talked about as Deadpool 3, but even recently they've made clear, Sean Levy, right, is the director?
Yes,
has
the
made
director
clear this
of
is
Night at the Museum.
This is not a sequel. This is not a sequel. So before we get into just possibilities or things we'd want to see, I'd say let's start with what is like an alternate Deadpool that you think we might see? Do you think we'll see alternate Deadpools in Deadpool and Wolverine? And what is one alternate Deadpool that you would love to see on screen, but will probably never happen?
Oh,
what's your alternate Deadpool dream?
Well, the one I think we might see, I'll say that one first because I need to think of the other one still. But the one I think we might see would be the X-Men Origins Wolverine Deadpool. Like that definitely seems like the kind of in-joke that they would have, and making fun of how horrible that
He'll
was.
go kill him. I mean, people seem to think this movie is going to be Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe, but I think Deadpool kills Deadpool is a better possible structure where he's bouncing around universes to kill Deadpools, or some Deadpool is doing that for some reason. So that would totally work. He could go to the X-Men Origins Wolverine and kill him. In terms of ones we'll see, I'm not totally sure. I could see us seeing... Well, I actually think I have the same answer. My likely and unlikely are going to somehow be the same thing. And it's what I said to you when we were talking about this episode this morning. I think... So she's called Lady Deadpool or Lady Pool, which is, of course, dumb, although it's probably also a satire of people being called Lady something.
Lady
when they're
Deathstrike
women.
and all those.
But she has long blonde hair coming out of a Deadpool mask. So Blake Lively should obviously be Lady Deadpool. Yeah. Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively have been together for a long time. She can be really funny and charming and quirky in things. And even if it's a cameo, I would love to see her as Lady Deadpool. And I think it's possible that we will. It's the right tone and meta joke that would work well in the movie. So that's who I'd like to see, and I think maybe we will see. Did you come up with anyone unlikely that you would like to see?
I don't
Any
know.
version? Maybe the Frank-N-Furter version.
The Frank-N-Furter would be, really, really fun. Or anyone else that I think that they could explore. Well, I was thinking like something with, I don't know why I'm keep being drawn to the Wizard of Oz. Something like Dorothy with like, because he'll be on a quest, right? And you can have the Wolverine is like could be the cowardly lion or the not so cowardly Wolverine.
It's true. It'll be like the Fantastic Four. What if the Land of Oz one that we read? Yeah.
And in Deadpool 2, the Colossus is one of the big characters, right? So Colossus is the Tin Man. You just need someone who is the Scarecrow. I don't know who that would
sadly
be.
for your purposes, though good for all of us in the world, Disney does not own the Wizard of Oz because isn't it Warner Brothers? So they don't yet own Warner Brothers.
No,
I'm saying the movie though. Yes,
they don't own the movie.
Of course,
they don't own the movie.
They don't own the movie, so they might be worried about doing it.
That's true. They might be a little worried about being sued.
10 years from now, they'll probably own Warner Brothers, but
yes.
So
yeah, I do. But do you think that there will be like alternate? You think this will be a multiversal movie? Is that something that people
feel
are
like we know it
speculating?
is. I don't know. It could be misdirection. And actually, we should tell our listeners, you and I don't watch trailers anymore, so we have not seen the trailer. But I think we can safely assume we're still in the multiverse saga. I think we can assume that this is going to be a step in that storytelling. Now, again, Sean Levy said you don't need to have seen any other Marvel movie to come enjoy this. I think that's a lot of marketing to get people in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to guess there is going to be stuff here with timelines. I know a lot of people are really latched onto the X-Men 97 mention of an absolute event or a nexus event, as we know from things like WandaVision and Loki and Multiverse of Madness. And so people think maybe in Deadpool they're going to play with that something's happening. There's some nexus event. I know this seems really unlikely to me, but some people think that the Hugh Jackman Wolverine that's in Deadpool is going to be the Wolverine coming out of X-Men 97, because he, I guess in the trailer, talks about seeing something really horrific happen, and people think that might be Genosha. So who knows? That seems way too complicated for what they're trying to do at this point. They're trying to create something really accessible, but I do think there's going to be somehow universe hopping, multiverse hopping characters. It's going to be light though. It's not going to be deep into the mythos of multiverses. I think it'll be like No Way Home level, but probably with violence, where they're either killing multiversal versions or there's incursions happening, which of course would be a light touch setup to Secret Wars, stuff like that. So yeah,
I think No Way Home is definitely, in my mind, the closest analogy of what I think this will be, but I think in some ways it will satirize some of the things with No Way Home.
I'm sure.
Which took it more seriously, not like super seriously, but yeah, I think that it had that nostalgia which we were going to 100% get from the Hugh Jackman, but I think there will definitely be jokes about the multiverse here, while No Way Home did not play it that way. So I do also think my other prediction I was saying to you off mic too is I think this is just going to be a huge movie. I think just people who are not comic book fans are going to pour in to see this, and hopefully that also lifts all comic book movies in general, which people have been saying, oh, they've been dipping, but I definitely think this is gonna rocket them back into the stratosphere.
Or comics. Can we lift comics,
yes,
please?
That's true.
Can Marvel do a better job of telling people at the end of a movie, hey, you liked this? Go read. These come out every month. There's hundreds and thousands of them. Go.
You know, I think one thing with this character that could really help comics is the fact that for almost all of the movie, I'm going to guess, he is going to be masked. So it's not like, oh, that character doesn't quite look like the actor in it.
Yeah.
Like Deadpool looks like Deadpool. So I think it
true.
could be a really easy transition for people, especially younger audiences, even though it's a rated R movie, but younger audiences going, ooh, I really like this character. Now I'm going to read the comics, and it doesn't matter. I can hear Ryan Reynolds' voice. I don't need to see Ryan Reynolds' face, which might be a hindrance for some of the other characters.
Yeah. And then the last thing I'll say that I want in the future is I want a Harley Quinn animated series Deadpool series.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And frankly, I think it should just be a spin-off of the Harley Quinn series, which will never, ever happen. But I think they'd be such good... First, we talked about this on the Harley episode, actually, for some reason. One of our Harley episodes, we talked about Deadpool and Harley being two good characters who would be the most natural entry point if there's ever a Marvel DC crossover again. The two of them encountering each other make a ton of sense. But tonally, visually, stylistically, the level of adult content that Harley is, I think is just perfect for Deadpool. So I'd love to see Deadpool show up in Harley and then break out of her universe and get his own series. It would be, even if it doesn't cross over with Harley, I just think that style of animated show I would watch.
I definitely
and love.
agree. And I think we've both, or of course, loving X-Men 97 so much, where it's showing me like, wow, maybe animation really is the way to go forward with a lot of these things.
Yeah,
Like,
between
you could
Harley
just...
Quinn and X-Men 97, I mean, I think those are two of the just best storytelling comic things, and one is totally comedic and one is totally high stakes storytelling.
And I throw over in not necessarily strictly comics, but like the Masters of the Universe TV shows that have come out as well. Like that's something that struggled to get into live action, and it's making me think back to like the Tick and Freakazoid. Like there were so many great comedic superhero shows like that can really. You can really lean into the wackiness, and suddenly Deadpool can look like somebody else, and you can't necessarily do that on screen as easily as you could do in animated. So I agree. I wonder if this movie is a really big hit. I wonder if they would just, and because X-Men 97's been such a big hit, I wonder if they would just do a Deadpool series, an animated series. It seems like a great way to continue the character for a lot less money.
Yeah, though we know... The only thing I think is probably a problem, we know when projects start in development and then die out, their rights get really tough, and just the cost gets really tough. So I wonder if the fact, even though Disney owns FXX at this point, I wonder if the fact that there was this project in development for a year that got canceled, if they'd have a hard time going back in or not. But enough time has hopefully passed. At this point, it's been 7 years.
You know who's making me think? Of course, Ryan is really good friends with Rob McElhaney from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. They're on that football team together, and It's Always Sunny is on FXX. So it feels like that would be a great bring in some of those Always Sunny guys to work on Deadpool the animated TV series. That's a perfect match right there.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed. I'm sure we'll see more Deadpool after this summer, but definitely excited for the summer. So that is a wrap, dear watchers. Thank you for listening. I have been your Merc with a mouth, Guido.
And I have been Rob Liefeld.
Our reading list is in the show notes. You can follow us online at Dear Watchers. Find us on Threads and Instagram.
And leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen. We'll be back soon with another trip through the multiverse.
In the words of Watu, keep pondering the possibilities.